Welcome back to KHTS Radio for a very special interview. I am one of your hosts, Jade Aubuchon with the KHTS News Team, and I am joined today by the Greenwood and Murphy families. Thank you guys so much for joining us. First off, we have in the studio, we have Steve Murphy, and then on the line, we have Karen Murphy as well as Linda Martin. Thank you guys very much. We are here to talk today, unfortunately, about some very sad news. On November 27th of 1972, 30-year-old Linda Greenwood and her 3-year-old son Adrian, as well as their neighbor Scott Murphy, were murdered by a Hart High School student. That man is still in jail. However, though he was sentenced to life, he is once again up for parole. And unfortunately, the families of the victims are the ones who are having to speak out in order to make sure he stays in jail. Thank you guys very much for joining us. How are you doing today, Steve?
I think under the circumstances, I'm doing well. It's never easy to go through this process, but I'm sure I'm speaking on behalf of Linda and Karen. We really appreciate what you are doing here, allowing us to speak up on the parole hearing and everything for Robert Grigsby.
Karen, do you have anything you'd like to share?
No, just reiterate that. It comes often, and it's not our families that will be hurt again if he's released. We know that he is in a good enough condition that he can do harm again. This was not his first offense. It was his third.
That is correct. That is correct. So Robert Allen Grigsby, I believe he was 17 at the time that he committed these killings, which, as a reminder, he went into the Greenwood home and attacked a woman and 2 very small children viciously. This was entirely unprovoked, and this was a teenager who unfortunately was experiencing some sort of imbalance. He had a history of attacks, Karen, as you mentioned. He had actually only just gotten out of a juvenile detention program just a couple of weeks before he committed these murders. This is someone who unfortunately has something wrong with him.
Correct.
He has been in jail for a very long time. He was convicted in 1973 to life, but it wasn't until 1978, just 5 years later, he was already allowed to be up for parole.
Correct.
So he
Which
is only,
hard to believe.
correct. He is only 69 at this time. That man still has a lot of life left ahead of him. Life that he took away from your family members.
Yes, correct.
So why don't you tell me a little bit about your family? Scott was your younger brother, and I know that you lived here in Valencia with him.
I did. We were extremely close. Since I was 11 at the time of the crime or the murders, Scotty was 3, and I was pretty much the one that looked after him for the most part. I mean, my father worked a lot of hours, and even though my mother Mary didn't work, anytime we went outside to play or whatever the situation was, I was, the oldest big brother, and I was in charge of making sure that everything was okay with Scotty.
Karen, can you tell me a little bit of what you remember of Scott? Well, apparently we lost a little bit of the channel here, but that's okay. I know that in total there are 6 of you as siblings, and you're spread out a little bit.
To me?
I was. That's totally fine. Can you tell me what you remember of Scotty?
Sorry. He was a sweet, loving little boy. I mean, there were 6 of us. Scotty was number 6, and the rest of us, Spencer was the one that was closest in age to him, but I think there was still 3 or 4 years difference there. And so he was the baby. We all babied him, and as Stephen said, took care of him. Stephen was there full time. We were only there for 6 or 9 months right after Scotty was born. All 6 of us together.
Which, just as a reminder for everyone listening, this incident occurred in 1972. That is well over a decade before Santa Clarita even became incorporated as a city itself. We are talking about the community of Valencia. As a matter of fact, part of the Old Orchard community just north of Lyons Avenue is where this incident occurred. It's just a few blocks away from Hart High School. So this is the sort of thing that has had a mark on Santa Clarita, and it's unfortunate that the broader community has forgotten about it while your family is forced to still deal with this. What have
I think
you
Valencia
heard?
remembers it, though, Jade. I think the Valencia community does remember that.
Good. I'm very glad to hear that. I know we did an interview back in, I believe, 2022.
Correct.
Have you heard anything from residents in the area or had any sort of response from people who remember this incident?
I
Yes,
remember.
and
Go ahead, Karen.
their signature on the petition, and they state and comment about it. Some of them went to high school with him. Some of them went to school with his brothers and sisters. Different ones commented about living in Valencia at the time of the murders. There's also a blog called Top of the Mountain, I believe, and this girl was either a high school student or a college student at the time, and she has a blog about it, telling about it.
How about you?
Yeah, every once in a while I'll Google either Scotty's name or Robert Grigsby's name, and articles will come up from, someplace in Southern California, whether it be a blog, maybe a obscure newspaper or something, and there will be quotes from, like Karen was saying, maybe classmates of Robert Grigsby or other people at the time that were residents of the old Orchard area, and very supportive and outspoken. And I think, as Karen said, it was a long time ago, but anyone that's probably in the 55 and up category that lives around here or is from around here, I think remembers.
Yeah, and I think to keep in mind, as I say a long time ago, because I'm much younger than any of you, but, Adrian and Scott were three.
Yes.
They'd be my mother's age if they were still around today. And we have to keep that in mind, is that they had their entire lives ahead of them. The same goes for Linda. Linda was 30.
Yes.
That's nothing.
Very
Yeah.
young, very young.
Very,
Very
very young. And just because one person decided.
I think
Had
it
a bit of
was. I think it was not only one person decided, but as Karen and I were talking about on my drive over here, I don't think that the type of help that Robert Grigsby needed was necessarily available in the late 60s and early 70s.
No, that's a great point.
So, not excusing by any means, what happened, but I don't think that the awareness or the help, either one, were looked at or available at that period of time.
No, that's an excellent thing to point out. I was looking back into his background as we were setting up this interview, and the fact that he had been sent to a juvenile forestry camp, I think, says a lot about the time period. Specifically, this was a camp that had been set up in the 1940s.
Right.
It was very much one of those where the thought process, I think, is very militaristic, is you straighten someone out by beating it out of them. And that doesn't work with mental illness.
No.
Mental illness
No, it doesn't.
truly only works sometimes with treatment, which thankfully Mr. Grigsby has gotten in jail. But as we've seen a lot, it doesn't necessarily mean that they'll get it out of it.
Actually, the best that we can verify through the parole hearings, he's been very adverse to any type of mental health
Mental health.
help.
Hmm.
Yeah.
It's recommended at the end of each parole hearing for as many as I can get transcripts for. The parole board tells him at the end, because when they find you not suitable, they give you the reason that they find you not suitable. And the main one with him is that he will not get mental health help.
Yes.
It's free to him, and he won't do it. He refuses it.
So, as the public, I know that you've put up a change.org petition. What can we do to help? Is it signing the petition? Is it getting awareness out there? What can we do, Steve?
Um,
Sign and share that petition.
yeah, I think that's one way. I think another way would be, you know, letting the powers that be in the state of California, politically connected and otherwise, know what's happening with the parole hearing, you know, all the way up to the governor. I mean, so far, I think we've been very fortunate in that the governors over the course of the last 50 years who have the power, I believe, to review all parole decisions have agreed with the parole board that Robert Grigsby should remain in prison.
Yeah, I understand he is at a men's complex out in Chinos, which is truly not very far away.
No, I live literally as the crow flies, about 7 or 8 miles from the Chino men's prison there.
Now, I know we already talked about it, but when we met up 2 years ago, there was another parole hearing, and you guys did hear back from an attempt for him to try to get resentenced. Are you guys able to share any of that experience?
You want to start, Karen?
I'll let Steve speak
Oh.
on that. He was there in the courtroom.
So, yes, because California has changed their laws regarding who can be resentenced and why they can be resentenced, he applied through and with his attorney for a resentencing hearing. I attended the hearing, and both the assistant district attorney and Robert Grigsby's attorney appeared before the judge, and both gave their pleas as to why, you know, he should remain incarcerated, or on Grigsby's side, why he should be released. Although he may technically be eligible, if I can put it in layman's terms, the judge basically said, you know, in no uncertain terms is Robert Grigsby being released from prison at this point in time.
That's definitely good to hear, considering
Yes.
what we know, which, as a reminder for everyone listening, I'm here today with the family members of Linda Greenwood, Adrian Greenwood, and Scott Murphy, all of which were murdered by a 17-year-old in 1972 here in Valencia. That man, who is now 69, is up for parole. As a matter of fact, his parole hearing is on the 25th, which is, I believe, next Tuesday.
Correct. It is.
And you, as their family, are having to deal with this still. Is there nobody from the prosecutor's office or any action from the prosecutor's office? I know that during COVID, there was a bit of a shutdown in prosecutors actually going to parole hearings. Have you heard any updates?
So all of the parole hearings, as I understand it, are now being conducted via Zoom or, you know, not necessarily in person. As far as the law enforcement and district attorney's office goes, I think everyone involved at the time in law enforcement are, for the most part, gone, dead, unfortunately, deceased, and the original people that were in the district attorney's office
Or at the crime scene, worked the crime
right,
scene.
are also either deceased or not available to testify. So it's, for the most part, it's up to, me, Karen, Linda Martin, Allison, and that's kind of about all that's left or available at this point in time.
Well, hopefully we'll be able to get a little bit of help for you here. I'd like to remind everybody to check out the change.org petition that we're going to be sharing on our website, as well as in the video for this interview. I have no more questions. Is there anything you guys would like to share about Scotty?
Go ahead, Karen.
It's been a long time. It's hard to even remember as an adult that little boy because it's been so long ago. And I shared with you that we have of the six of us together. It was so hard on our parents that there's no pictures of Scotty once he was murdered. My father had to identify his body in that carnage, and our family never recovered from that. They just did not recover. That's why I want to keep him in prison. He does not need to destroy another family or two families or three families, because it's not the cousins. It affects everybody. It has a ripple effect that you're not even aware of some of the things that you do because of the murders, or that you don't do.
No, I think,
and how you respond to things.
yeah. To reiterate one point that Karen made, Scotty was a very gentle, loving 3-year-old. And for anyone that's had children, 3-year-olds can be a little tough. Scotty was not like that. No, he was fun-loving, smile on his face all the time, wanted to play.
Happy.
Yeah, very happy, very happy. And we just, we want to try and keep Robert Grigsby in prison, like Karen said, so that no other families are affected the way that our family was.
Well, I hope that this helps. Thank you guys very much for coming in. And I would like to also just give one more shout out for everybody to remember Linda Greenwood, her son Adrian, and your brother Scotty.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jay.
Thank you all. Thank you so much for joining us, Linda. I know that a lot of you are calling from out of state, and this is very complicated. So thank you all very much.
Thank you, Jade.
And thank you for joining us here on KHTS.